one thing you can do that will increase your gross profit margin by 1% is raise your prices by 1%. And that is different than selling 1% more, because if you sell 1% more, you bring along with that sale additional variable costs. If you
Yeah.
raise the price, whatever you raise your price goes, if you're, as long as you're profitable above break even, whatever you raise your price to goes directly to the bottom line.
Yeah.
So, and I don't find too many people, we find a lot of people who are loath or reluctant to raise their prices, but just about everybody thinks they could raise their prices 1%, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's totally a doable one. I think also with that, finding ways to sell more to that same customer is another great one that kind of falls in lines with this. Is you can either raise your prices on what you're already selling them, or you can sell more to the same customer um, as a way of gaining more revenue, because those are the two ways that you can increase your revenue, is selling more or selling more to the same people.
Right.
Um, so
But the
I,
problem with just viewing it as selling more is it does bring cost with it.
there's cost with
Yeah,
it. Exactly.
yeah, I mean, you can absolutely do it, but a 1% price increase really is free money. It just comes in the door, falls all the way through all your expenses, and comes out in your bank account. And an interesting thing here too is that if you can do I said 1% increase in margin raises your profit 14 and a half. Well, if you're starting out at 7%, 2% raises your net profit 29%. It works that way.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't always work that way, because after you get really profitable, you're not at 7% net profit anymore. But yeah, go for it. If you're going to raise it 1, go ahead and raise it 2. If you're going
Yeah.
to raise it 2, go ahead and raise it 5 until you hit the point where you freak out and don't do it.
Well, and I think it's important for listeners to, I mean, there's inflation going on. People feel that in a real way. I think there's a justification for raising prices, and anytime there's a justification for it, you need to take advantage of it, because yeah, that's probably one of the biggest areas of head trash for a lot of owners, of just like, I can't raise prices, I'll lose the customer. And then what am I going to do after that? And then, and most times you can afford to lose the customers. You even have a price increase calculator of how much business you can afford to lose when increasing your prices. But yeah, I think that's a really great one. So let's jump to the next one. Um, pass along credit card charges is a great one. And this just is in general, changing how you process payment maybe
Right.
is another good topic. But I know a lot of contractors are pretty stiff on, we're going to use a check because we don't want to deal with that. But some of the smaller ones, especially small service contractors, are doing the credit card charges. What are you seeing?
I'm going to, I mean, I haven't written it down and studied it, but it appears to me that most people will take credit cards.
Okay.
I think quite
Depends
a
on the
few
size of the
now.
job.
Yeah. But some of that depends on the size of the job. Somebody's gone through one of these finance companies and
Yeah.
they charge you 3%. It's not a credit card, but it's 3%. There is a point where typically credit cards are going to take 2.5 to 3%, right?
Yeah.
Um, so if you stop taking charges, it wouldn't necessarily increase your net profit that multiple of 3%, because you don't take credit cards on everything. But on average, it's maybe costing you 1%. So
Yeah.
quit doing it. A lot of people already do. Uh, and by quit doing it, I mean, add it back. Hey, it's $100. If you give me a check, it's 103 if you use a card. There are people who price the card into it and then just don't say anything if they give you a check. In other words, you don't discount for a check. That's fine. But I'm kind of saying, hey, if you can raise your prices 3%, go raise your damn prices 3%.
Yeah.
Just just do it, right?
Yeah. It's a tough one. I think there's pushback sometimes on some customers, and maybe those are customers you need to fire or not work with, but of, you're going to charge me more to use a credit card? Like, that's just the cost of doing business or whatever. Um, But I think you're even seeing it honestly at like restaurants and coffee shops, like they're adding back for credit card fees. I see it all the
Yeah.
time. So I think people are understanding that that's costing more and more just to process payments, and 3% at the end of the day of your top line revenue
Yeah.
is a big deal.
Well, when you figure that the average company makes 7%
Yeah.
as net profit, the 3% now is factored into that. But what would it be if it weren't there?
Yeah.
I would love to have started a business where I got 3% of all the transactions that make up the United States economy or the world's economy.
It's a real thing. Stripe is
Yeah.
a multi-billion-dollar company for a reason. Visa and MasterCard are crushing it.
Square, every,
Square. Yeah. I think another thing to think about, with this is in terms of credit card fees, moving to a credit line at a bank rather than using your credit card for payments if you're doing that is a huge deal as well because the interest
yeah.
rate's completely different. So that may be another way of reducing some of those expenses by just getting a really good relationship with a bank or multiple banks, having credit lines and operating on those rather than on credit cards, where you're paying fees if you're not, you know, tying them out each month. So, uh, this is an interesting one that I think we learned from, was it Will Blake or did you learn this next one from some?
No, Will Blake did this. He's been
Yeah.
on our show. It
He's been
was
on our show. I
great.
don't know if we have the video up, but it's one of our first episodes we did. We may need to get him back on. But number 3 is install vending machines in the shop. So Will was just tracking his vehicles, which if you're not tracking your vehicles, we did some fleet management episodes. Really valuable thing that you can get from your fleet management is knowing where your guys are. And the first stop for all the guys is going to the gas station. And they would spend sometimes 45 minutes there pumping gas, getting snacks, getting their coffee for the day. Well, he was done with that and basically put vending machines in the shop where he priced things even really low, where it was like more advantageous to get things from the vending machine than going to the 7-Eleven. Um, and then they would have drinks and coffee and everything was there where they could show up in the shop, grab everything in 5 minutes and then head out the door and get to the job
Gone.
site.
Yep.
So I think that's a huge one. And, obviously it adds a layer of complexity to where now we've got to go to Sam's Club or Costco twice a week to restock all this stuff. And someone's got to be in charge of it and you got to manage it. But what's the benefit? I mean, what do you remember what Will
Yeah.
said in terms of the
Well,
productivity rate?
no, don't don't really remember the numbers, but I think he's at 9 trucks with 4 guys on each truck, and figure it's an hour, at least an hour a day, because you stop on the way out and you stop on the way in.
Right.
That's what. But anyways, and stop doing that. That's another job a week per truck, 9 trucks. I mean,
Yeah.
just calling it out as an average. That will increase your margin because your cost, your labor cost of doing those jobs will effectively go down
Yeah.
because you can spread your labor cost, your variable labor cost over more jobs.
Hmm. And so that's point 3. Point 4 is tied directly into this, which I'd
Right.
never heard of. Who did you hear this one from?
You mean the fuel?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got a couple of people doing it.
Okay.
Uh, there are fuel suppliers, and I'm sure our listeners, well, I presume they might have heard of it. They will come to your shop at night and fill your trucks and your equipment, anything that needs fuel. Um, and so everything's completely full in the morning when people come up. So it's the same thing.
Same
No,
idea.
no, yeah, same idea. You don't have to stop anywhere. They'll fill your gas cans, and you think, "Wow, that must be really expensive." It is not. I mean, I can't quote the numbers right now, but we've sure looked at it. I think one guy, I don't remember how many trucks he had, but he paid $150 a month to be in the program, and then he bought the gas. And the
Oh,
gas I mean, it's comparable to what you pay for it at the station.
yeah.
So,
Seems like a no-brainer.
so anyway, that with the snacks, and you just eliminate those convenience store stops.
Yeah. No, those are 2 really good ones where you're just making your operations run a little bit smoother so that you can be more profitable, cutting out wasted time, essentially.